Let's talk about the presidential appointees. This week we have one who is basically a flop, as it were. One who I would have liked to have had flopped, but Rand Paul did a flip flop on this. And then we have one coming up, obviously, in Gina Haspel, which we won't know about for, I guess, another couple of weeks. But the story this week is really, I guess, between the potential head of the VA and also the Secretary of State. I mean, where should we start with the man who thought that Donald Trump was in excellent health?
Sure. Let's start with him. That one's an interesting one because, obviously, I mean, we're talking about Ronnie Jackson, the admiral who was the White House doctor that came out and gave the glowing report on the president's physical health, even to the point of saying, you can believe me or you can believe your lying eyes. Essentially went on for an hour, with nothing but glowing superlatives about what a wonderful person Donald Trump was, along with how, what great health he's in, all of which was completely unbelievable. And it's funny because when that happened, a lot of us who were watching it were tweeting and, communicating in various ways that this seemed crazy. There was something bizarre about the performance. All the Obama people who had worked with this guy in the Obama White House chimed in, oh, no, he's a great guy. You people are being too harsh. He's a wonderful person, and that you're wrong. You're seeing, and I'm going, I don't know. I mean, I'm seeing what I'm seeing here, and there's something weird about this guy. Well, as it turns out, Trump nominated him for the position of, to run the Veterans Administration,
Right.
which is the most sprawling bureaucracy in the U.S. government and extremely difficult job. There are problems everywhere. It is a health care agency. It's also a pension agency. It deals with tremendous amount of problems, and it always seems to be in crisis in some way. And
I mean, I don't think we can overemphasize this enough. The Veterans Affairs Department, like you say, it deals with pensions. It really performs almost every single function that the U.S. government performs, but the U.S. government performs it in different, basically with different bureaucracies, right? The VA performs all of these functions, almost every function of our government, but it is sort of in its own silo. It also has, on top of that, a whole range of incredibly unique issues that we don't really see replicated anywhere else in American society, because you have to deliver medicine to people who are spread out completely across the country. You have to deliver a specific type of medicine that is particularly unique to essentially your customer base, right? Because veterans have a very unique set of health issues that are not shared by the general public because of their experiences in war. And so it cannot be overstated how complicated and difficult this job is. And it's not like any other job. I mean, frankly, I would feel more confident with, I don't want this to come out wrong, but with someone who is inexperienced to be president of the United States before I would with someone who had no managerial experience in the context of the VA, because it is such a sprawling and unique bureaucracy that we have.
It absolutely is, and it requires not just someone with, very, very, intense managerial skills. I mean, this is something, this is a hands-on management job. It's not something where there's a lot of performance involved like there is for our current president. I mean, this is something that's very, very specific. It is also politically fraught at the moment because there's this whole group of people, apparently, that the Trump administration has installed, these beachhead jobs where they put in people that,
Right.
are just supposed to hold down the job until the confirmation process, or they find other people to fill the jobs. And basically, they're all right-wing ideologues. It's kind of like the Iraq War. You remember after, when they did the
CPA.
The Coalition Provisional Authority, and it was, they wrote that book called the Imperial Life in the Emerald City, which was about just this crazy bunch of, Heritage Foundation interns. They dropped in there to, here, create a new stock market. They were doing stuff like that. Well, that's kind of like what's happened in the U.S. government, with a bunch of right-wing ideologues just sort of installed, and nobody's really trying to replace them, or they're unable to replace them. And the VA is where it's really showing itself, and there's a group in there that is trying desperately to privatize the VA. And this is a highly fraught political issue that, if it ever really hits the public, I think, and I don't think the public really understands that much about how this is going on, veterans do not want this to be privatized. They don't. They want the agency improved. They want to get their care, streamlined. They want a whole lot of things to be fixed in the VA, but they do not want it to be privatized, and for good reason. Because it actually works pretty well. When it works right, it works pretty well, and they know it. It's the same thing with Social Security or Medicare. I mean, these are government-supplied pension and health care systems that work. And, the minute they start tinkering with that, with the privatization, people who are involved in those systems get upset. So this is a very, very big job, and it couldn't be more important than it is right now. With this beachhead situation that I just mentioned, and all these politics that are going on under the surface. And so what does Trump do? He nominates this guy who he spends a lot of time with because he's the doctor. I wrote a whole piece about this for Salon, talking about him, in the old monarchies. They always had the Privy Council, and the Privy Council were this group of nobles who were sort of, they dressed the king, they bathed him, and there was one special one who was the last one that ever saw the king, and the first one in the morning, who literally went into the toilet with him and helped him do his business. And it was called the Groom of the Stool, was his actual name.
Wow.
And so this guy, Ronnie Jackson, there's a whole bunch of people who perform that, but this guy, Ronnie Jackson, his office is right outside the private residence. So he often is the last guy who sees the president every day. And apparently they got along very well. Jackson turns out to be a real kind of true blue Trumpy. I mean, as it turns out, he really likes the guy and agrees with him. So he was kind of President Trump's Groom of the Stool. Well, in the old British monarchy, the Groom of the Stool was later turned into the guy who pretty much ran the treasury of the Old English, because he had such a close relationship with the king that the king came to trust him and gave him this tremendous amount of responsibility.
Heather, we got to take a quick break. When we come back, let's talk about his downfall and why it is that he's going to be taken out because of sort of like tangential issues, not the biggest one, which is he's unqualified. We got to take a quick break. We'll be right back. I'm talking to Heather Parton. This is Sam Seder on Ring of Fire Radio.